Hello, everyone. This is Yonks with the DAO Hack, and we are bringing you episode 5. And we are joined here with Leo and Josh from the Cortex team.
Hey there.
Glad you guys can be with us here today. Super excited to learn what you guys are working on over there at Cortex.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
So, Leo and Josh, we'd love to hear about the origin of Cortex. How did it come to be?
Josh and I were both working in digital health, actually, a while back, and we had both Josh had been working on the actual solution, but I also identified the problem, which is that, essentially people don't own their health records. When you go to a physician or you go to a hospital or you go to, onto an app, all that information is really just, dispersed across all these different organizations. They don't have any incentive to share. The information really doesn't revolve around the individual. So at some it was really a while back at some early Bitcoin meetups, Josh and I met, or actually had gone to a few, and people said, oh, you should, and I talked to people about this problem, and they said, oh, you should talk to Josh because he's working on something that sounds very similar. So he and I met and decided we should, turn it into something.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that I'm super excited about here is how that we can use content. Like, content is such an important part of every business. Like, when you really peel back what a business or an organization is, it's functionally process and procedures, which are largely documented content. And that's one of the things that we at Retoken, and joined by the rest of the core team here, thanks everybody for hanging out today. And I sent out a tweet that I was very near and dear to my heart. I feel that this is the right conversation at the right time, as far as the evolution of where we're at with Retoken, the real estate DAO. And one of the things that really resonated with me, Leo, when we caught up over at Improper City the other day here at a Cryptorado event, go Colorado, that wikis. I'm a huge fan of wikis, and I don't know how that will look, because I haven't really seen any Web3 solutions that really provide a wiki type of context. And I think I even mentioned that another DAO, I saw in their proposal that they had a $240 bill for a very popular wiki solution that's used by a lot of Web3 DAOs and other organizations. So can you kind of paint a picture as far as how that works within Cortex, and I don't know if you can potentially demonstrate.
So let me go from the transition from healthcare to something bigger, and then we'll go into think a bit about the wiki and the current architecture. So I think early on we realized distributed data and information around an individual is something that is a problem, of course. In social media as well, nobody really owns their content, so to speak, and a lot of organizations, as you say, don't really own their content. It's owned by a lot of third parties, so we quickly came to a realization that the problem was much bigger. So in the last couple of years, when we're seeing a lot of note-taking applications that are really popular now, that a lot of them are project management tools, we thought, the one thing that was really missing is that there wasn't a distributed solution that, you put a lot of some of your most sensitive information into a lot of these applications, whether they be social or whether they be note-taking apps or even project management tools. But you're really lacking that control. And so why didn't something like that exist? So took the base architecture and then moved it into the current architecture of creating a wiki that's distributed and also a wallet, and let Josh speak a little bit more on that.
Yeah, like Leonard was saying, we initially started out and focused on healthcare and building out a data system that would work well for that and managing sensitive data. And the system itself can be used for a lot of different things. And that's the reason we kind of pivoted away, and we always kind of intended for it to be used for more than just healthcare, because solving problems there really can apply to a lot of different areas. So the current system, it's mainly about giving some structure and building off of a BIP32 or HD wallet type of system to be able to separate your data and structure it, and provide the security around having different keys and different ways to share different parts of the tree.
So
you want to show some of it, Leo?
Yeah, so we can just go into a little demo. And of course, this is not live yet. This is demoware, but what you're essentially looking at here is like an early kind of a desktop where each one of these is a folder, very much like we're used to seeing, but of course, it's going to look a little bit more polished when it's actually out. But the difference here is that while each one of these is a folder and a file structure, it's actually also an HD wallet, so and a wiki combined. So I'll open one of these up in a second, but just briefly, we'll go into how you would create a new one. And these ones don't have names yet. That's why they just have these IDs essentially. But to create a new one, it's based off of a key and a channel, as well as a domain. So you can think of the .crtx domains that we'll have at launch, somewhat similar to like a .eth domain. And Josh can talk a little bit more about like some of the details on the differences. But they're NFT-based domains where each one is a key, right? Sorry, each one is a NFT. And they're actually a tree of NFTs. So each subdomain that you create is also an NFT that's tradable. But then that kind of gives it a global address. And then underneath this global address, you can kind of think of that top domain as kind of the left side of the URL. And what comes after it in one of these file structures is kind of the right side of the URL that would come after the slash. And it's based off of a key and a channel. The key could be in versions we'll be releasing, could be a key that you already own, the private key. And the channel gives you different sharing capabilities. So you can share a channel, say, within an organization, or share publicly, or share with just like, say, one individual person. And so these will just pick random ones right now and create a new one. But if I go into like a folder that's already been created, this is a Markdown and it is a wiki. So what you see here, is the 15 or so basic shortcuts or whatever that you use in Markdown that gives you a kind of like nicely formatted structure over here. But the difference is that each one of these, and from the domain through to the URL underneath, each one of these is a key. So while it holds content, it's also resolvable to a valid crypto address. So, and creates then linking between different crypto addresses in that structure. And Josh can speak maybe a little bit to the back end, but the default will be IPFS, but eventually you'll be able to hold this information in kind of whatever backend you want to. I'll let it transition to Josh there if you want to speak to any of that.
Yeah, so the way the data is structured is you have a folder that can live on your local file system for each of the different notes that have their own path to each note, and its own complete crypto address key pair. So it can be individually encrypted. It can receive tokens, and then it's can be stored locally. It's all hash using the same algorithm as IPFS. So it can also be distributed on IPFS if you want to share content, which you don't have to do. And you can also store it in the normal things like Google Drive or iCloud. Any of those things you can store the data on as well. For all the sharing functionality, you want to push it to IPFS though, but each one is very similar. Each of these notes is very similar to kind of a Git repo on its own, and it can have other data associated with it. You can also read any of it in plain text if you're looking at the files, unless it's encrypted, of course. Yeah, so it makes for a very flexible system, way to link between using those topics, as they're called, inside of a cluster, group of notes. And then one of the things that's being built out is the ability to see what other people who you know and follow are saying about the same topic. So because everybody has their own key pairs, their own space in that.
And so this, if you, it shows like another note, but because it's today's date, but this is kind of what Josh is referring to by the topics. So if I go back to the home where we were, this is kind of the default page there. But if you go down the tree to a new page, this will essentially be its address within the structure and within the URL, but it's also it's like kind of topic that you give it. So topic today would be 13 or something like that. Makes sense.
Yeah. So what stage are you guys at as far as having this available for people to start, or organizations to start using?
We're getting pretty close to alpha testing. Josh, I don't know if you have more to add there on exactly when, but this is on an Apple desktop right now. And I'll let Josh speak to any timeline.
Yeah, so most of the main functionality and the hard stuff behind the scenes of the cryptography and how addresses are created and everything is done. There's some things we need to polish on distributing the data and some of the group functionality where you have teams that are editing the same notes. But we're planning on doing an IDO later this month, and we should start or have a early version out shortly after that.
So you mentioned IDO. So who wants to talk about that? That sounds exciting.
Yeah, so we'll have CRTX tokens that'll be used for storage and for mostly in the beginning claiming your domain names under the .crtx top level domain. If you wanted Yanks.crtx, where you could then have all of your data live and complete file structure to share. And, you can imagine having this subdomains underneath that you have for different purposes and share those independently. We have a few that are early DAOs that are looking at using this as a project management tool. and maybe a replacement for something like HackMD on the dev side. So we've intended this to be really flexible, and we're really excited to have people build and show the different kinds of things that they can do with it based on how flexible it is.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the comment here, Leo, from the Chad here, and I've got that streaming up here now. It says from the Chad, "This is really cool, and I know Yonks is drooling over the Markdown." So, true story. I have been enjoying like more practical applications of Markdown and just collaborating in an easy to manner text methodology for getting some documentation and stuff like that. So
guys, can you tell us about who should be using this? Are you aiming it more at people that have already been using traditional wikis and just want to get more in the DeFi space, or this for traditional business that are looking for a process management tool? Who should be looking at using Cortex?
Yeah, early on, we're definitely looking at people who are already involved in crypto in one way or another, and DAOs seem to be certainly one group that's very interested in using something like this to manage documents around DAOs, because it is crypto enabled in a lot of ways, as well as within the NFT space, because people because these are all human readable URLs. You can have NFTs that live in these places. You can kind of think of Cortex as kind of like we call it like a gallery, where you can put your NFTs at that address, but also put the metadata and other kind of data information around them. So it kind of creates a whole crypto space of relationships, I think, that doesn't exist quite yet. And how keys are related to each other and how they're related to actual web addresses. So I think the real first target markets are people that are builders already and can really build and showcase the kinds of things that you can do with this kind of flexible environment. That said, we are getting some interest from traditional businesses as well, that are maybe making the transition to think about some of the benefits of crypto and being able to manage projects and manage information in a trusted way between different parties that maybe hasn't existed before, ways to validate when events actually happen and be able to put different incentives around them on a project plan as well. So we'd love to hear from you if you're thinking about those kinds of use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So give your website a plug, or where should people, if business owners are listening to this, where should people reach out to you?
crtx.app, app is our main website. We're also Cortex_app on Twitter, app underscore Cortex on Twitter, and Cortex_app on Telegram.
Cool. So are there any programs that this natively integrates with, or what kind of tools, what traditional business applications go in, and what DeFi and crypto applications does this work well with? Does it fit with?
I'll let Josh speak to that. Have some plans on integration.
So it follows a couple standards. Since each note is its own, or page is its own crypto address, you can do things like send NFTs to it or other tokens, so they can hold tokens, which allow for all sorts of different integrations around that space. Besides that, the files, as I mentioned earlier, are all just regular Markdown files. Stored, you can read with any editor, so you can work with different editors and things that way. And then we'll be expanding on some integrations. Don't have any specific ones, I don't think, planned yet, though, besides working with Markdown and adding some ways to embedding and things like that inside of the notes.
Yeah, I think an early one, actually we haven't talked about yet, but one of the interests that we'll get is that, well, there's, with applications that exist already, there may be trigger points in applications where you'd want to write to a file within Cortex and be able to automate that somehow. So we're working on that. That could be different project management tools.
I'm super excited about the implications in healthcare. I know that's not really your focus, but I had a baby a few months ago, and they actually, I was trying to upload something to my app. They asked me to write down the stuff on my app on a piece of paper and fax it to them. So I would,
yeah,
youngsters with me.
The problem with healthcare is not really a technical one, though. Unfortunately, anybody in healthcare will tell you, like in a lot of businesses in the current environment, data is treated as an asset, but and one that they want to hold dearly, because really, if they're holding your data, it means that you're locked in. It's a kind of locking people in. So if, you don't want to switch doctors or switch institutions if your data is available anywhere. So a lot of that's really economic. It's not, they could probably share it and have the same information, even be able to share it with you.
Yeah, for sure.
If the incentives were there, but they're not.
So fast forward 5 years, you guys are insanely successful. What does Cortex look like?
We've talked a little bit about this. I mean, I think it's my dream scenario, and we haven't talked about the kind of second version of this, is more like a GitHub for anything. And so I think there's a lot of scientific applications there, publishing of scientific information, or really any kind of information. If you want to think of it like each one is almost kind of a chain at that point. And the highest value chains maybe will be longer, something like that. But I think of that as kind of like a human knowledge machine, or, a kind of general infrastructure for knowledge that I think is pretty exciting. Thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about the information sharing and collaboration pieces, not just project management side, but part of the reason they're called topics and the name is Cortex is that it's kind of a giant external brain for everyone. So you can, if you're researching a specific topic, you kind of make a note, like a link like you would in a wiki for a specific page, and you can take your own notes on it, but anyone you follow or trust, you can see what they're saying on the topic. So you can kind of gather all sorts of information on things and contribute to it, and then link between those different thoughts, and not just in your own head, but with everyone else.
Yeah, I think, that's definitely a place that we want to get to, is just a general purpose knowledge sharing and knowledge development tool.
I roped you in on that Twitter thread where I think it was Kay from one of the raid guilds, where talking about decentralized knowledge management, and that I think is one of the biggest opportunities, is just the collaboration of information here, where everybody's not like reinventing the wheel so many times, and yeah, it'll, like, one of the things, and this would be, I guess, a good segue to the chat over here, was talking about potential webhooks. So is that something that Cortex has actually put some thought as far as some roadmap items, integrations? And I think that there was a little conversation already about that.
I haven't had this conversation. I don't know if you have, Josh, or thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, so integrations and things will definitely happen, especially as you pull and link to different pieces of data. It will be more of that type of thing, where it's more linking and embedding different types of data inside of your notes and pages. than necessarily webhooks. There will probably be a place for things like webhooks, but there's also some different challenges around that specifically because everything needs to be signed. So if you're having something automatically publish something for you, then it has to have keys and access to do that. So yeah, that just has to be managed correctly and in the right spots. So
yeah, the other thing I was going to mention is the opportunity. One of the other places I'd like to see this go is that, we're so dependent now on algorithms of whatever platform that we're on, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, what have you, is because the data really can belong to the individual or even to the organization or to, whatever structure you're kind of putting Cortex into. I hope that someday we get to a place where you can, essentially hire the algorithm that kind of works for you. Early on, we'll just be doing things by topic, but I could see a day someday that almost like a marketplace of different agents that can work for you based on your needs as opposed to where other people are trying to steer you.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the huge opportunities just with Web3 as far as changing some of the data ownership narratives that we've seen proliferate in the Web2 architecture that has existed. So it'll be interesting to see, like, and going back to like I think one of the opportunities, while a lot of Web3 infrastructure is getting built, is bridging and making it easier for people as the transition from a Web2 architecture to a Web3 architecture occurs. And is that what kinds of conversations have happened at Cortex as far as kind of making that easier for people to happen?
Well, I think you can see, maybe you can't see it that well, but I think you can start to see that by giving everything a human readable address, we're starting to make everything really look a lot more like Web 2, even though this is maybe a little bit of a throwback, visually, to maybe like Web 1 or, 90s web in a lot of ways, because we're kind of going back to basics. You really start to make this, I think, a lot more approachable. That you can have addresses that go deep for any page that are crypto addresses, where potentially key management becomes a lot simpler and less intimidating for a lot of people. That's definitely one of our goals.
A lot of the wallet side doesn't require tokens to work either. We use the CRTX token to register domains and things like that on the blockchain, but a lot of that can be done even without a person knowing that they are using crypto as well.
Yeah, we want to make this as inexpensive as possible. So a lot of the features in terms of, even though the things might be signed and validated as yours, only certain things you'd want to put on chain or go on chain. And we're building on Polygon so that a lot of use cases for posting and even we'll get into the kind of social stuff that we do now. We want to push a lot of that, more of that Web 2 activity, like liking and emojiing, whatever you want to call that, into Web 3. So it really becomes kind of a personal history as part of this as well. And you get all the benefits of Web 3, but in the kind of familiar ways that people are used to working in Web 2 without the costs as well.
That's really exciting. Real quick, Crush, Poopster, or Rhett, do you have any questions for these guys? Okay, we'll keep going. So tell us some of the industries that you would love to disrupt or be at the standard of, or what are some of the different applications that this technology has moving forward?
Again, we're definitely keeping this as foundational as possible, so they can be used across a lot. But I actually just this morning had some conversations with people in construction, and if you look at, one of the statistics that was thrown around in there is that 75% of those projects are delayed, which leads to a lot of expense, and a lot of it is a communication issue. That's one thing that we may have a project in very soon with construction. But again, we want to make this as general purpose as possible. We've got interest from a lot of industries across the board for this kind of thing, where you have a easy way to disseminate information that's trusted.
The kind of initial focus is being a really good way to organize your own thoughts, and then build on top of that. So, there's, because of the way it's built underneath, there's a lot of different things you can expand into. So as we mentioned, each note or each page is its own wallet with its own address. So you could do GoFundMe type things where you have all your contacts and receive funds to a specific address. You can do publishing of blogs that you receive tips on specific articles that you might write. Eventually, it could even replace some of your regular news feeds. For example, like as you saw, it has a kind of a today section where it's a shortcut to a paid topic for the current date, and you can put your own notes in there. But when we add the ability to see what other people who you trust and follow are saying about a specific topic, then you might go to today's page and have your favorite news source, your favorite bloggers, all kind of show up in there. And then right alongside of that, like I said, you can tip them for an article. You can give them thumbs up as a token, and kind of really be a way to share and manage your own knowledge and your trusted knowledge, like Leonard was saying, but not just trust in that they wrote something, but also be able to follow people you trust and kind of build that out. And like that.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So sounds like some of the functionality of Reddit plus Google Academia plus Substack. Is that fair, or is that off on that?
That's a lot, but yeah.
And it could be too that all those are kind of versions of those are built on top of Cortex. It's not necessarily the Cortex is replacing all of them itself, right? There might be specific topics that develop in certain ways that everything's nested underneath of, right? So there might be a domain for Reddit that, maybe there's an upvote or karma token that you can give to people and has some special features. But yeah.
Super interesting. So my mind's kind of all over the place, right, with what the capabilities of this thing are. So if you look at things that came out a few years ago, like the Human Genome Project, where somebody just sourced that and they released it into the wild to let research be built on top of that, are those applications available in this, or is that what is just an open knowledge base? Or are people going to be able to set up more private channels to do a freemium model on their own pages and their own wikis?
I think that's the exciting part, is and why we want to go after builders in the beginning, is we're really like, we go through this all the time, like, what can you do with this? And the possibilities are just so, I think, unlimited. Once you kind of, if you look at the NFT space as kind of a first way that we're really combining data, JPEGs, whatever, and crypto in a meaningful and has gotten people excited, and maybe a lot of new people excited. We feel like we're extending that kind of relationship between data and crypto in a much deeper way, and we're just excited to see what gets built with it. Because there's a lot of directions this can go, and we just want to give the builders the tools to be able to build those things.
We love building all the things and love having tools to do that. So one of the things though and this just became kind of a forethought or just really new in my mind here, as just spun up yet another WordPress site within literally the last 24 hours for Token Town. And the thoughts are still that WordPress is still king when it comes to making easy to spin up sites for SEO. So that's the question here is Google the king of the search still? And I know that that's shrinking very, very marginally, but what is SEO looking like, and how's that? Because that still seems to still be a struggle with some of the Web3 sites.
Yeah, getting picked up by Google will definitely be a challenge for Web3, but maybe you can talk about some of the gateways there, Josh.
Yeah, so and the main thing would be Google being able to find it, right? So, if you have a .eth domain or something like that, Google can't access it. You have to add, special DNS servers to your browser or something to be able to access those. And that's the same with the CRTX ones directly. But we will be providing different bridges, so it will be accessible to people without needing to install anything. So it will run on the viewable version of a page will be visible through those gateways. So, it might be leo.crtx.link. And so those will all be accessible, which means that Google can index them. And as far as what WordPress generates versus what the pages will be like on Cortex, it's mainly about what's in those for SEO. So making sure you set headers and metadata and stuff correctly, and also the speed that sites load, which should actually be a lot better using Cortex than WordPress, since it doesn't need to be, it's all static sites, static pages.
Yeah, and that's a good consideration, and I know that speed to load on websites is increasingly important. So looking forward to seeing, and definitely count to us in at Retoken and Token Town for an alpha. I did sign up for the early access. So. And that might be a good thing for me to bring up here real quick in a little screen is the Cortex app. I know I've been bringing that down below here, and I'll do that real quick again for everybody. Cortex, and I'll bring up the website here too. So this is the Cortex app website. Like I said, I did sign up for the early access right here, Simple Web3 Publishing. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Simple Web3 Publishing. So does anybody have any final thoughts or questions in the audience, or what would you like to leave us with, Leo or Josh, as far as how to get the most alpha access to Cortex?
Yeah, just reach out. I think my DMs are open, so feel free to DM me on Twitter, Telegram. I'll check like once a week, but feel free to reach out. Certainly sign up for our early access. We've got a lot of stuff that's going to be happening over in the next month in terms of airdrops and promotions. So we just had a pretty cool meme contest, and I was just blown away by how many responses we got. There's hundreds out there, I think, now. And the creativity. So I just, much like that, I'm just really excited to see, to get this out there and to see what people can build with it. So if you're interested, whether it's project management or it's just publishing, or NFT galleries or anything like that, it is flexible, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and I've got a comment up here now from the Chad, one of our core team here at Retoken. Can't wait to play with it, Cortex. So super excited to explore simple Web3 publishing with Cortex. Thank you, Leo and Josh, for hanging out with us here on the DAO Hack here today. And one final, I'm gonna bring this up real quick. I know that we've got people that love the POAPs. We've got a claim code coming. It's not going to last too long, and I'll change the time on that. The claim code is Cortex, all lowercase. That's something that you have to claim with the mobile app in on your mobile, whether Android or iPhone. So Cortex is the claim code, and looking forward. And that's one of the things that I'll definitely be, as we gain access to Cortex and begin exploring that, we'll definitely be sharing our journey here through various channels online, and would love to have you guys back for a future episode of the DAO Hack or Retoken, Leo and Josh both. So thank you, both of you guys. Thanks everybody for hanging out here today. And I'm going to go ahead and bring a wrap to today's broadcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're coming in.